So, Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food? Injections? It's important the entire world learns of your experience.
That's enough!
The teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS TDRS. Nice to be in orbit.
Broadcasting from the Forest Tower Studios in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. Voices for Verity in this crazy realm of polarity. Good evening, how you doing? Thanks for joining us wherever you are. If you're listening in your office, your car, on your headphones, or in your bed, it doesn't matter. All across the World Wide Web, thank you. It is Tuesday, January the 9th, and the night is cold and damp here in the natural state as the moon is waning on into midnight. Fire up your chakras, sync both hemispheres of your brain together, and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void between spirituality and science on this wonderful night. Thanks for joining us. Now, this is a live show broadcasted on the Fringe.fm and can be heard on lightingthevoid.com, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes Radio, Radio Guide FM, Radio Garden, and more by proxy via the Fringe FM. The TalkStream Live call it a listen line. If you don't have data, if you're having data issues, is 701-719-3971. Call-in number for tonight is 501-777-5631. Tricked by the Light. That's the subject we're going to be talking tonight. Wayne Bush is going to be joining us here just shortly. I do want to say thank you to Brian for donating to the show and to the network. When I say we are on red alert, I mean, guys, we are on red alert. So if you can help, that would be great. Just go to thefringe.fm or lightingthevoid.com. Go to the donate button. I don't care if it's $5. If you can spare it, we need it. Now, we usually don't get in situations like this. We're only a year old. We're the new kids on the block. And I've struggled back and forth. Should I do advertising? Should I do listener supporting? And because I haven't made up my mind, it's kind of backfired on me a little bit. So, if you can donate, go ahead and do that for us, please. I would be much appreciated. You have no idea how much I do appreciate it. It costs a lot of money to run all this stuff, and I'll leave it at that. Also want to say thanks to the guests last week. That was cool. And tomorrow night, you usually know when you look on the website, I put out Tuesday and Wednesday night. Well, I didn't put out Wednesday night's show for a particular reason. I had a certain guest contact me. It's kind of a big deal to me. And if I can, it's almost confirmed. And if it is confirmed, it'll be a pretty big milestone. We've had some really good guests on here lately. And I don't know if you guys heard this. When I had John Lear on the program, several people have told me that it sounded like that the phone was tapped. Now, here's something interesting. Ever since John Lear's been on this show, and I'm not one to go spouting about conspiracies or anything like that. Oh, yeah, I got to say this. Everybody over at the Bell Gab, how you doing? I'm giving you validation right now. This is me. How you guys doing? You guys are funny. You're entertaining. All right. So ever since I've had John Lear on the program, I've had the websites come under attack, my personal websites come under attack, and several IP addresses flooded in from the Philippines onto the server. Now, I've tracked that IP address down to where its location, looked at it on Google Maps, and it looks like a very tall, abandoned building, so it's probably a proxy server or something. I don't know. You decide, but I've had a few people tell me that. Anyways, I don't want to get too far down into the conspiracy stuff, but you guys do remember the age-old talk show when John Lear was on Art Bell and they had this discussion about not going into the light because it could be a trick? Well, Wayne Bush from trickedbythelight.com is coming up to discuss some of his research about this. So you're going to be intrigued at the very least. So that's coming up. Now, I already told you about tomorrow night. We may have a surprise guest. I'm working on that. Saturday, I'll be over at Spaced Out Radio doing the Spaced Out Radio Spaced Out Saturday. We're going to do Aliens Among Us Volume 2 with Preston Dennett. But I will say this, guys, we may have a problem. And I'm hoping we don't. But since this week has started and since all this tech stuff has started, I've had 2 blue screens of death this week. Now, I think I've fixed them. But there's a lot of crazy tech stuff going on with these chips, and I'm praying I'm not under attack here. But as far as all that goes, but yeah, I custom built this computer. I got an awesome card. I've got an awesome chip. You splurge on it. You build a computer because I do a lot of stuff on this. I run the whole show off this one computer. So I hope it doesn't get my baby. I really do. Don't forget to go to ancientlifeoil.com and get your bottle of Ancient Life oil. That's the best stuff, the most pure CBD oil on the planet. Also get your Empower and Protect course from the Freighter Xavier at lightingthevoid.com/Xavier. Click the banner on the website. Also sign up to the newsletter. We're still going to do our monthly drawings. We send out the mail once a month for the winners. And Yeg won that awesome DVD. I think it was about $150 with all those speakers on it. So we give away cool stuff here. So thank you for all the new signups on the newsletter as well. Also, follow, like, and subscribe. Everything is Lighting the Void, YouTube. We've gotten quite a few YouTube subscribers here lately. So follow, like, and subscribe. Everything is Lighting the Void. Now, I told you I wasn't going to do birthdays anymore because it's kind of cliche. But I got to say a big freaking shout out to Jimmy freaking Page, just turned 74. So I had to toss that out there. All right. Enough with the stupid stuff, right? Let's get on with the Gilson report, shall we? Got to do that, even though I hadn't seen Jeff in a coon's age. Now, everyone talks about Google and Facebook as watching you, right? But the truth is, over 77% of websites today are tracking you. 77% of all the websites that you go to, not just Google and Facebook, not just Amazon, 77% of all the websites you go to are tracking you. According to new research that will surprise pretty much nobody. I'm sure you're not surprised, but just to let you know, 77% of websites are tracking you as you navigate around the web. Now, the one thing that they're using, just to know, so you want to know how are they doing that? Well, a widely used mechanism for much of the tracking is an image file of a single pixel. They put a single pixel on their web pages to track you with. And I think it was Ghostery and Clicks. That's who did this research. And they examined 144 million web pages and found that just under a quarter, matter of fact, it was approximately 22.6%, use no trackers at all. Pretty shady stuff, man. Our internet has become so shady. So be watching because they're watching you. Now, I may be a little dumb, but I haven't heard of this. And I'm wondering if you have. And I want to know if you're going to do this. On January the 12th, I'll just give you a little history. Have you ever heard of psionics? You guys heard of this? On January the 12th, 1967, James Bradford, a psychology professor at Glendale College in California, who had just died of cancer, took his first steps towards coming back to life. On that day, the professor became the first person ever frozen in I guess it's cryonic or cryonic, cryonic suspension. I don't know why I called it cryonics. Embedded in liquid nitrogen at minus 321 degrees Fahrenheit. So what is cryonics, right? Or cryonics, excuse me. I keep saying that wrong. I think I spelled it wrong. But anyways, it's the process of suspending somebody that just died in a frozen state. I think Walt Disney did this too, until the remedy for what killed them has been discovered. So then theoretically the person can be thawed out and cured. Science will only consider a person properly preserved if they can be revived with all of their memories intact. So if you go brain dead, you're out. You can't do this. So many questions are arising about this, whether those currently frozen can be successfully revived. Are there currently frozen people? Yeah, there's a ton of them. So this process vitrifies the brain, turning it into a glass-like substance. This neuroscientist, Caltech guy, Christoph, of course he'd have a name like that, Christoph, echoing, says that many experts said it would be utterly amazing if this change to the brain's chemistry didn't destroy the synapses that hold memories. Now, one major champion of freezing is Ralph Merkel, a board member at the Alcor Life Extension Foundation facility in Arizona, having performed their first human, I guess it's cryopreservation in 1976. They have 153 deceased patients frozen in its facility, including Bedford. And almost another 1,000 people have made arrangements to be preserved when they die. Between Alcor and the Cryonics Institute in Clinton Township, Michigan, there are at least 290 people chronically frozen in the U.S. This is freaking insane to me. We are so afraid to die that we're freezing ourselves. This is kind of old hat news to me, but, you know, we're still doing this stuff. And what I want to know was, would you do it? Would you freeze yourself so you can come back? So maybe they cured it. This doesn't give you everlasting life. It's only going to cure the problem that you had before you died or after you died. And honestly, it doesn't make sense to me, like after you die, they freeze you and then they cure it. Are they just going to resuscitate you? I don't know how they're going to do that. But, yeah, we've got more popsicles out there. Don't forget about that. Go freeze yourself. Go freeze yourself. All right. You know how you guys hear me complain all the time. I want to move out west because that's where all the UFOs are. Well, according to reports of UFO sightings, Manhattan reported more UFO sightings than any other bureau. Manhattan has gone from Studio 54 to Area 51, leading the 5 bureaus in sightings of unidentified flying objects over the last 2 years. Now, this is just data from the National UFO Reporting Center. I don't think it's MUFON. It's not MUFON. So, otherworldly tourists have included UFOs, and they have seen round orange orbs. We hear about that a lot. Obviously, cigar-shaped craft, and even an unknown creature that teleported into one New Yorker's backyard, according to some of these reports that made to this Washington-based group. Now, this is a government reporting group. In all, there have been 27 space sightings. Okay, 27 sightings in the sky, got it, in Manhattan since 2016, with Brooklynites close behind reporting 24 strange objects from a very bright round-shaped light in the sky to a fireball of lights. Also in Queens, they've had 20 unexplained episodes with a particularly impressive arrival last June. I didn't know that. New York, you don't ever hear that. All the magazines, everything that I read, it's always Arizona, California, Montana, Dakota, all those places over there. The Midwest, all the way to the West. Manhattan has got the most, according to this report. So here's the skivvy on the chip flaws. I can't even talk tonight, man. Just so you guys know, because I think this is a little bit bigger than we're letting on here. But you guys know that on January 3rd, a group of cybersecurity experts announced the existence of 2 security flaws affecting virtually every microprocessor on the planet. They even codenamed this thing Meltdown and Spectre. The meltdown exploit affects computer processors that were built by Intel over the past decade, used in the majority of consumers' PCs, and over 90% of the world's computer servers. Now, this sounds a little dangerous to me, but it's more widespread than they're really telling us, because it doesn't just affect Intel processors, but also it affects AMD processors as well, and the ARM chips, the ARM chips over in England. Now, these vulnerabilities could potentially allow hackers to access personal data from computers, mobile devices, smart TVs, and cloud servers around the world. So we're looking at a possible global meltdown. That's why they're calling it meltdown, if somebody gets into this good enough. And if they put malware, if you get this malware infection from this, such as a virus or a worm, to read the chip's kernel memory, and I'm not going to lie, one of those blue screen, I had this, it was not yesterday, but the day before, I had that blue screen of death. I had a kernel memory error, which allows the malware to bypass the usual privilege checks that would otherwise isolate the data from such an... How are we going to stop this? How are we going to stop this? I mean, seriously, there's nothing here that says anything about stopping this. All it says is make sure you update. They've even stopped an update today. They were going to, I think, Windows and Mac, maybe it was, I know Windows for a fact was about to release an update. And they stopped it because there were more errors afterwards, something like that. So they haven't figured this out. All they're doing is telling us to say, hey, just make sure that you update your computers. Don't worry, we got it. This is crazy, man. I hope my computer lasts through the show because I'm starting to freak out a little bit about this. It's not really fear-mongering or anything like that. This is really happening. All right, well, anyways, don't worry about that. Just kind of slide that to the side and, don't worry about it. Windows will take care of it, right? Anyways, when we come back, tricked by the light. Is the light a trick? Wayne Bush is going to join us. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with Lighting the Void.
Pull back the blinds and uncover the truth. This is Lighting the Void Radio.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We rock the paranormal talk.
Lighting the Void is proud to announce Mind and Magic's Protection and Defense Course for protection from magical and psychic attacks. This is not a joke. Magic practitioners are on the rise, and with that comes attacks from baneful or black magicians that try to harm or hurt others for their own selfish reasons. If you are not a believer in psychic attacks, then this isn't for you. If you are, and you want the power to defend yourself and your family and home, then I highly suggest you grab Freighter Xavier's Protection and Defense Course. In this course, you will learn how to tell if you are under attack from a natural source or if an individual is attacking you. The 4 forms of curses and attacks. How to remove self-imposed curses. The correct way to cleanse your home from negativity or malevolent entities. How to make your own holy water. What you should always keep near or under your bed. Herbs that banish negativity and promote purity. The most powerful banishing rituals on the planet. And for those that seem to want to harm you the most, how to put your enemies in a hell pit of their own making. You can also learn protection against shadow people and other entities. Or are you just in a bad planetary alignment? Even how to get rid of an enemy using a tic-tac box. It does not matter what your faith or belief is, this will work. Click the banner on the website at lightingthevoid.com or go to lightingthevoid.com/Xavier.
Hi folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Select Joe Roop at checkout at Ancient Life Oil.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Dark Waters at 4 Pacific, 7 Eastern. Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. Spaced Out Saturday with Joe Roop, 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. And S4 with Eric Cooper, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. Live Saturdays on the Fringe FM. We rock the paranormal talk. Online at thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio with Joseph Roop. Stay up to date right now, lightingthevoid.com.
Hi, this is Ryan Gable, host of the Secret Teachings radio show. If you are interested in ancient knowledge and hidden mysteries, as well as a unique and balanced perspective on conspiracies, symbols, and the occult, then join me every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Fringe.
Hey, space travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
On the Fringe FM, we rock the paranormal talk.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, the Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. I do understand. I'm just getting messages now that some people, the show that I hosted on Spaced Out Saturday where Dark Waters gave out free memberships, I will tell you this, I did text him, and he said he would take care of it. So I can assure you, you're going to get your free memberships from that show, and I will stay on top of it. I promise you, Angel, Christopher, whoever. He's just super busy, but we will get that taken care of. All right, now let's bring on our guest. Wayne Bush is the creator of the website trickedbythelight.com, which for over 12 years now has investigated the popular meme that souls go to a white light at death. Now, Wayne strives to answer the age-old question that we all ask. Where did we come from? Why are we here? And what happens when we die? Wayne has studied numerous areas of relevant research, including near-death experience, out-of-body experiences, psychedelic experiences, ancient teachings such as the Sumerian tablets and Gnostic texts, the latest findings from the scientific community, and last but not least, the overt and covert messages of pop culture, including music, movies, television, language, government, and religion. You can check out his website at trickedbythelight.com. Wayne, thanks for coming on Lighting the Void. How are you doing?
Well, thanks for having me, Joe. I'm doing fine. It's a little cool here in Austin, Texas right now, but it's not too bad.
Right. It's supposed to warm
How you
up here
doing?
tomorrow. It's supposed to get like in the 60s, I think, just for one day.
Yeah, I think we got up to 70 today, so that was pretty nice.
So I remember the show, and we were talking about this at break. I remember the show where Art Bell was freaking out, asking everybody that, hey, have you ever heard, don't go to the light, it's a trick. And apparently John Lear told him that, but what you were saying is Whitley Strieber might have been the one that told John Lear that when he told Art Bell.
Yeah, I think I have that actual interview because I was trying to find the one where John told Art that it's a trick not to go to the light. But I found, I've got most of John Lear's interviews, and I think I found one where he said, well, he qualified it and said, well, now that's what Whitley told me. Of course, Whitley had so many of those abduction experiences with the gray aliens, and I've actually found a few near-death experiences where they at least a dozen where they see gray aliens in the light during their experience.
Well, when I went to your website, I like how it's set up because it's really simple and you've got everything in the subject matter. Each little subject, you can click on the avatar and read about it. And I noticed you had that section there about Robert Monroe. Now, Robert Monroe's books, he had some fascinating experiences that he couldn't explain. He would just journal them. But I was putting that together too. And back then, to be honest, when I started kind of putting that together with some of the stuff that I read about, this is like a prison planet and we're trapped in this reincarnation energy cycle type thing. I was like, is anybody else researching this? And about that time, it wasn't a month after that, I seen Wayne Bush on The Secret Teachings, Tricked by the Light. And I was like, daggum. So I went to your website, started looking at it. And sure enough, You've been at this for a while now. Was it that show that had you look into it, or were you looking into it way before you heard that?
Absolutely, it was the John Lear show when he. I was interested in near-death experiences. I'd read books like Life After Life, Saved by the Light, Embraced by the Light, and I had just been coming out of like a Christian background, and so I was interested in spirituality. And I had a friend who we would go down to the bookstore, and he was into UFOs and aliens, so he would go over to that section, but I was more into the spiritual stuff. And so what I found was these near-death experiences, and that really interested me. So when I slowly started getting into more I guess New Age type stuff, and I heard about the Art Bell show, so I started listening to his show. And when he had John Lear on and John talked about the light being a trick, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. I really need to investigate that because at a certain level, it did seem to make some sense to me.
Well,
then
I'll ask you some questions about did you read or listen to all of Robert Monroe's books, the trilogy?
Absolutely. I've read all three of his books, and I've seen like a 9-part series, I think it is, on YouTube, where I think it's called Wednesday with Bob Monroe. But some of the interesting stuff that Robert Monroe talked about, just besides the out-of-body experiences, where he talked about this thing called Loosh, and I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, and he was saying that somebody somewhere is, trying to find this energy source for something. He was very vague about it, but he definitely said that they needed something of value, and that he termed it Loosh.
It was like he didn't understand it really, but it had something to do with the emotions that we have in relationships or something, right? Or our experiences.
And he said the most pure form of it, or the purest form of it, is love. And they did experiments or whatever. They found that love was the strongest, purest source of Loosh. And so that does kind of tie in with a lot of the near-death experiences where they feel this overwhelming love when they're in the light. And I don't know. I wasn't ready to quite go into the near-death experience stuff now, but it's not a big deal. Where they were talking about how we need to come back to Earth to learn, and one of the things we need to learn is to love, right? But they said in order to do that, basically, you need to suffer. That's why they say that we suffer here is all about learning. But I've never quite understood why suffering needs to be a part of the learning process myself. But
unless it gives off a certain energy that certain people want when you suffer.
Right. Exactly. They may be harnessing or harvesting the energy that we give off and using it to basically sustain themselves. And there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but there's quite a few examples in the near-death experiences. There's this website called NDERF, NDERF.org, and they've chronicled over 4,000 near-death experiences on it. And there's like a search box where you can type in terms. And I've tried everything I can think of. And one of the interesting things is there are beings that can take any form in the light, and sometimes they'll appear as your father, your mother, a deity, an angel. And this one guy said, it wasn't until I asked, who are you really, that she appeared to him as the Virgin Mary, and when he asked who are you really, that she took her natural form. And these entities say that they can take any form they want to make them feel comfortable, is what they say. But
so the light we're talking about here is the light that people say they see when they die. I see this light. I'm heading towards the light like a bug towards a zapper, right?
White light, yes. And a lot of them, they say that they're like sucked into the light. Some of them see the light and they're curious and off they go. But a lot of times, I would say most of the time, they're drawn there beyond their control. I mean, and it may be them subconsciously wanting to go there, and off they go. There are a few cases where people are able to, kind of reset it and not go to the light. But I would say almost all the cases they're kind of pulled there beyond their will. I mean, in a sense, and once they get there, they don't seem to be in control of the. They have a life review and all this other stuff, and they're kind of in a lot of cases. Some people describe the white light as being cloudy or misty. Others say it's a pure light. But it's interesting that they describe it as being cloud-like or misty because I lost my train of thought there. What we were talking about.
Well, you were.
I'm sorry.
You were talking about the cloud and misty part of it, and I think that has something to relate to like one of the ancient gods, doesn't it?
Well, it does relate to the Gnostic teachings where they talk about Sophia, who was the mother or the goddess of wisdom, and she supposedly inadvertently made this mistake. She was in the 13th eye on the 13th level, and she desired to go higher. And the demiurge was upset because she was going to leave her station, and so he got angry. And what they did was he shone like his own light and tricked her into looking down below, thinking it was the light that was above. And so she came down to the false or impure light, and then they enclosed around her and entrapped her and stole her light. But what they said was she was basically embarrassed, and so she put him in a cloud, is what they said. She put him on a throne within a cloud.
Gotcha.
And there's near-death experiencers where they see the clouds, and not only that, they see a being on a throne. And in many cases, there's actually a couple of cases where I searched for the face of God, and near-death experiences will see faces. And a lot of times it's loved ones or angels or whatever, but they usually can't see the face of God because it's so the intensity or the frequency is just so bright that they can't see it. But of the few cases I saw, there were a couple, and specifically one named Charles, where he said that it had the face of a lion.
That God had a face of a
lion?
The
Gnostics actually... the face of a lion. He said it scared the crap out of him because it had the face of a lion.
Yeah, man.
And the Gnostics described this false god deity as having the face of a lion. And so there's a lot of things that do
the body of a serpent, right?
Gnostic.
The face of a lion and the body of a serpent. Hey, now that you are mentioning that, I don't know which book it was in Robert Monroe's book, but do you remember a part where he was talking about where he went into this place and he wanted to go wherever God was, or he was looking for a more higher realms. In other words, trying to figure out what this was all about. And a being kind of came to this place where he was with all these other people, and they all had to lay, he said they had to lay on their stomachs, and this thing would like slither or walk over their stomachs. You remember that part?
No, I don't. I was kind of scanning through it real quickly to try to find relevant parts, and I didn't really reread it in depth. I mean, I had read them like 20 20 years ago or something like that.
Well, he talked about a part where and I don't know if he was looking for God or whatever, but he said when this being came around, everybody kind of knew that they weren't supposed to look up. In other words, they were just supposed to respect it, not look up at it or anything. And they all kind of laid down, and this thing would go over all their stomachs. And he said it felt like a snake or something going over something like that, going over their stomach or midsections. Like he was kind of using them as a bridge or something.
Wow. The experiencers a lot of times do mention that they're told not to look up. I interviewed one because, people were on my website saying, well, it would be interesting to see what near-death experiences would have to say about your theory. And I was kind of dreading it, but I'm like, yeah, I really do need it. So I went to the local IONS group, which is a near-death studies group. And so they would go around, and there was like a half dozen or so people there that had to have the experience, and they would briefly tell it. And this one man in particular was talking about how there was a lot of psyops on the planet right now. So I said, man, that's the guy I need to talk to, because he'd be understanding of a conspiracy type theory. So I talked to him after the meeting, and I said, have you ever heard of anybody mentioning the demiurge or archons? And he looked at me, he goes, I met the demiurge, and he didn't know anything about my website. And he says, the moon is here, and the demiurge was like right here. And he was talking, then he started mentioning aliens, and that's a prominent part of my website. John Lear talks a lot about the moon and aliens, obviously, too. But back to Robert Monroe, since it's so interesting. I just wanted to say that a lot of the near-death experiencers do say that they're told not to look up. And that man in an interview was told not to look up. And I was talking to him. I had lunch with him like a few weeks ago, and he said that there were all these eyes that were looking at him. Because he knew not to look up, but that there were all these eyes. And I showed him there's a painting that Alex Gray does. I think it's called Collective Vision. And it shows all these. There's a white light at the center. It's got all the eyes. And I showed him that, and he basically said, yes, that's it. But back to the Robert Monroe stuff, because it's so interesting. Actually, Robert Monroe talked about meeting the demiurge, or not meeting the demiurge. Well, I guess he did meet him in this Wednesday lecture that he gave. He called him the entry director, and he says, when you come down to Earth, you have to go through this director, and he's like showing you all these possible bodies that you can take, locations and stuff like that. But he called him the entry director. And one of the interesting things that Robert Monroe mentioned when I was going back through the books was he talked about an emitter. And he said this emitter controls or projects this, he called it a hologram or a dream. And actually at this near-death studies group that I go to here in Austin, they mention Robert Monroe quite a bit. He's held in high esteem because he has like this Gateway program.
Yeah, the Gateway program.
Where, I guess you can kind of go to the light yourself. But it's interesting that I try talking about the loose and things like that, and it just falls on deaf ears. They don't really want to talk about anything negative, I don't think. But Robert Monroe talked about this emitter that projected what he called the dream or the hologram. And then he talked about he would go up, like you were saying, trying to find God and stuff like that, and he would find what he called the eye there, the IT.
Yeah, the eye there. I remember that.
The eye there. And he said that's like 2,000 or 3,000. I guess basically it's kind of like an oversoul. It's like 2,000 or 3,000 different souls or lifetimes that he's had. And he was talking about the need to reintegrate all those parts and pieces back into, I guess, the whole or the one. And he's talked about a lot of really interesting stuff in his research, and how he even talked about how we all got entrapped down here, that you would come down and find it curious, and then a lot of the stuff he would talk about is the need to reach a escape velocity in order to I guess blink out or exit out as he calls it. But
another thing that freaks me out about this is when I was looking at your website, I started thinking about the Robert Monroe books again, and not only him, but Preston Dennett, because they would run into beings that were trapped. Some of them didn't know they were dead, or like children that were looking for their mom, and things like that. And they would try to help them, like grab their hand, and they would fly up, and they would try to go to the higher dimensions and say, look, I'm going to take you back to your family or whatever. And sure enough, eventually they would look over and they'd be gone, like they would just disappear or dissipate. And that one just, I know what you're thinking, man, but really that one thing just freaks me out so much because, you know, death doesn't scare me as much as my consciousness blanking out. Like leaving like this, no more Joe Roop ever. Just say there's no more Wayne Bush, no more Joe Roop ever. And yes, you get recycled into another lifetime and all that from this main source of consciousness, but you will never remember that dude. So technically you're dead in physical and consciousness because there's no memory of you unless you go back to the Akashic records or whatever.
Right, exactly. A lot of the near-death experiencers will remember multiple lives that they had, and like you said, the Akashic records. Everything that we do here is recorded somehow, some way, and it's like archived off. And matter of fact, when you have that life review, they can show anything you've done in your life whatsoever. And I guess a lot of people would maybe feel some guilt over some of those things, and you know, eventually they convince you that you need to return, either that or if you don't want to, they'll basically just send you back. And there's a difference because the near-death experiencers obviously haven't died yet, so it's hard to know what actually happens after you die unless you read some of the stuff on In Between Lives or Life Between Lives where they put you like a hypnotherapist, like Dr. Michael Newton or Dolores King.
Michael Newton, Journey of Souls. That was a good book. Yeah.
Right. So, but I think they only got so far into it because, like a lot with the alien abduction research, there's like screen memory implants that they can place there, and so you think you're talking to the spirit or whatever, but you know there's another layer behind that, and you don't really get to it unless you're very skilled. I mean, I think some of the people like Professor Jacobs, David Jacobs, he's done like thousands and thousands, and he's very skilled and can get past that initial.
So let me ask you this, Wayne. Let's say that it's time for you to die, whenever that day is. Now, you've been doing like probably the most research about this trick by the light thing than anybody I know of. So, you pass away. You see the white light. And you've got a choice. Let's say you're not being sucked to this thing like a bug in a, you know, it's so beautiful, and you know, you just get zapped or whatever. But
Bug's life, yeah.
Yeah, let's say you've got a choice. What are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to try to do?
Well, that's obviously a big question, and this is just my own thinking. Is that probably the greatest scientist we've ever had, Nikola Tesla? He talked about how he said if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So, you know, like we've got this electromagnetic spectrum that we're in, and we only perceive just a tiny, tiny sliver of it. But, you know, there's all these gamma rays and everything beyond that. And then when you go to sleep at night, if you're falling asleep and you're losing consciousness, and, you know, we've got like 5 different brainwave states too. You know, the beta is your waking consciousness, but then there's alpha and theta and delta, and even the gamma wave state that's higher. But so when you fall asleep, you know, it just shows that there's different levels of consciousness, and some of them are you're more aware, and others you're just, you know, groggy and you're incoherent kind of stuff. So if everything is frequency based, and a lot of these near-death experiencers will say that you travel by intention or desire or thought or will. So, you know, you think of where you want to go, and you're there in a blink of an eye. I mean, most of them, it doesn't happen because, you know, they're drawn through the tunnel and then they're there in the cloud and they're having their life review. But some of them have traveled around, so that they say that you can create your own reality with, you know, manifest it with your own thoughts and will. So if all those things are true, for me, I think that I'm just going to have like this focused intent on raising my frequency. And some of the near-death experiencers say that you have a higher state of consciousness when after you've died like that, and so it's just a natural ascension higher in frequency. But you know, you get distracted by that beautiful light, and you go through the tunnel, and then all of a sudden you're sort of in their domain, right? And they can influence you with different, you know, whether it's the love or just the, you know, the magnificence of a being in a white light sitting on a throne and all that. But for me, I'm going to just increase my frequency and my goal is to, there's this other near-death experiencer named David where he was taken on a tour through like 7 different heavens. In each heaven that he ascended upward in, he said the light and the love or whatever was like 1,000,000 times more powerful than the preceding one. So I don't think he even got out of the all the different realms of the demiurge or the false realms, but it does show that I think the higher you go in frequency and higher dimensions, that the light is more pure and down here we're trapped by this fallen state of consciousness that we've somehow find ourselves in, right? And so, to answer your question, and I think William Buhlman was asked the exact same question, and I've got his answer in here somewhere too. But
I talked to him though, but I didn't. I've had him on the show. I'm going to get him back on the show, but I didn't. At the time I wasn't thinking about anything but getting out of the body. I wasn't thinking about higher states or higher dimensions. And even still, yet to this day, I've managed to get out of my body, but I still can't leave the yard for some reason.
Yeah, here it is. William Buhlman says, I'm often asked what I will do when I take my final breath. He said, my answer is this: I will demand to experience my higher self, my spiritual essence. I am not content to simply go to the light. I am not content to accept past acquaintances and comfortable surroundings as my new reality. In fact, I am not content to settle for any form-based reality as my spiritual home. I absolutely know there is so much more available beyond the realms of form. There exist dimensions of magnificent living light simply waiting for us. All we need to do is awaken and accept their reality. 2 powerful truths are apparent. First, all form is but a reflection of pure spirit. Second, we are not helpless victims of an external force that dictates or directs our reality in our lives. We are bestowed with the power of free will and the ability to take spiritual action. Why would you settle for a pale reflection of reality when the pure realms of spirit are always present? So in his books, he talks about how, I think he's had over 100 out-of-body experiences himself. And he also he surveyed over 16,000 out-of-body experiencers. So this guy knows a lot about the astral realms, right, and how to travel in it and what all's there. And he talked about, he would have these little commands that he would give, like higher frequency now, or
awareness now,
awareness now, clarity now, move inward. And so for me, that's what I would do. And I think you have to be careful with using words because the language is a spell. And if you say words like, I want to go to source, well, the word source is exactly the same as the Greek word for lizard, saurus, like dinosaurus or whatever. So you got to be, so for me, it's you're using like pictures or just pure thought, if you will. But I will do like sort of a mantra, like the higher frequency now and move inward, those kind of commands, so that I'll just keep ascending in frequency. You'll actually be moving inward, but because I think our consciousness is, we're projecting all these external projections out of it. It becomes it's like our shadow, the parts of us that we don't understand. And Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, we talked about 12 different archetypes, and one of them was a shadow archetype. And he was talking about how, we all have a shadow within us, and so that we need to, kind of recognize it. And I think he said assimilate it, or I forget the actual word he used. The text of Thoth, the Emerald Tablets, talks about transmuting the darkness into light. Yeah. So that kind of falls in line with what your title of your show is, Lighting the Void, and I think we need to do that. These archons, or these shadow beings that are basically attacking us, or they're kind of part of ourselves that we need to accept and recognize. But I wouldn't consider assimilating, but just transmuting it into light. But so I'll just keep kind of doing those mantras until I keep, because the last thing you want to do, you want to avoid these external distractions. Like they can, call you into the light, like, your mom or your dad or your loved ones.
I was just fixing to ask you that. I had images of my mom going, "Hey baby, come on over here." Yay, it's my family, Wait a minute.
They have that. They have access to all the Akashic records, and they can definitely do that. They can appear to you as your best friend. And matter of fact, there was somebody at the near-death group. They sent one of her two of her very best friends to convince her that she needed to come back, because she said that they sent like a representative of God first, and it was like this 20-30 foot magnificent being, but she refused to go back. And so, they try these different ploys or tricks, and, we all have one weakness somewhere, and they'll try to find it. But you have to like block all that stuff out and have this like, no pun intended, but like a tunnel vision, right? To go higher in frequency, and that's what my plan will be.
This is extremely unsettling, Wayne.
How's that?
Well, I mean, think about it. Like all our life, we've been taught that everything's so easy. You just die and you reincarnate, or you all I'm saying is it's a little scary if you think about it, because what if you're right? What if your research is right?
Life here right now is pretty scary. I mean, you think about our situation. We're on a planet where you literally have to kill creatures just to survive. I mean, you have to eat, maybe not every day, but you have to eat, and everybody does. And in order to do that, you have to take someone else's life force, and you're killing them. And, we think we're at the top of the food chain, but, there are shamans like Carlos Castaneda wrote about and talked about that can see these entities, and they basically, like I said, they farm us like we would farm chickens or cows, and they can take our energy. You talk to hospice workers and stuff like that, and they'll tell you, as I did when my grandma was dying. I asked her about she ever saw these white orbs, and she said, "Oh yeah, they here all the time." And I asked her about the shadow beings, and she just kind of nodded her head. She didn't seem to want to talk about them, but she acknowledged. And there was a TV show called A Paranormal Witness, I think it was called, and they had an episode on the I think it was called The Death Angel or something like that. But they would go and talk to these hospice workers, and they said, "Well, we're not allowed. We can't talk about this because nobody will bring their dear grandma and leave her here with us if they know there's all these." The angel, the Grim Reaper, and these beings are around. But they said, yeah, they do. They're here. And
I've seen the shadow beings in the astral realm. Mm-hmm. Actually,
yeah.
I've told this story before, but basically what happened is they shoved me back in my body. Like one time I was coming out of my body, or at least it could have been a dream, but I thought I was trying to come out of my body. I was in sleep paralysis. And it was almost like I was getting angry or shoving, like headbutting, trying to get out of my body. I was so mad because I couldn't move. I couldn't move my fingers. I couldn't do anything. And this command came through me, and it was like, I command you to release me by life and light. And the funny thing about it was when I said that is it wasn't even my voice. It sounded like James Earl Jones said it or something, And sure enough, I started coming out, and this shadowy blob just kind of came down real fast, pushed me, and I just woke up.
Yeah, I think there's a website called Your Ghost Stories or something like that, and yourghoststories.com, and they got thousands and thousands of these reports or experiences where people see these shadow beings all the time. I've seen one in a photograph. I had one of my ex-girlfriends when I was visiting her sister. We were looking through photographs, and there was this tall shadow being just standing right next to her. It was like 7 foot tall. And my colleague has seen him, and even his children have seen him too. The man I interviewed has seen him. I think they're real, and they do exist. But back to what I was talking about with that we're not necessarily at the top of the food chain. We like to think we are, but that there's these entities that we can't see, but they're there, and they can feed off our fears, our doubts, all the negativity. They can even feed off some of the more positive emotions, maybe the love in some cases. Robert Monroe called luge. But then you think about like a football stadium where there's 100,000 screaming frenzied fans, and or American Idol, where everybody's just screaming. I mean, I think they can probably feed off of all that euphoria too.
That's so wild to think about, man. Because what if you're right?
Yeah. So
I mean,
if it's that
in the
way,
back of my head, dude, I'm thinking this is crazy, right? But I didn't believe in astral travel. I didn't even attempt it until I read Robert Monroe's books, Wayne. I didn't even attempt it. And after I went through his books twice, I started attempting it. And I never got out of my body. And then I got William Buellman's material. his first material that was how to have an out-of-body experience. And just like Todd Akamisa said when he was on the show, he didn't start coming out of his body until he started using that. And then, William says that you don't really come out of your body. We're already as far out as we can go. You're really going back into consciousness, And now I'm seeing these shadow beings, and I'm thinking about all the stuff Robert Monroe said, and I'm looking at your website, and I got to be honest with you, man, it's starting to add up a little bit.
And there's real creatures on the planet today that use light to lure their prey, like in the movie Finding Nemo, where there's this anglerfish that dangles this light out in front, and it lures its prey to it. And then there's a cuttlefish, which cycles through these different lights to like hypnotize its prey. And then there's I think glowworms in Antarctica that they'll be on top of the caves and they'll mimic the stars in the nighttime sky. So there are quite a few different creatures even here on Earth that use light as a means to.
We do that down here to deer.
Right.
We put a spotlight on them and they just look at us like dummies.
Yeah, the deer in the headlights. Mean.
Or you can whistle at them and they'll look at you, but that's terrible. I used to murder deer by the dozens when I was a kid, but I didn't have a heart back then. But yeah, they loved light too.
So there are shaman that can evidently perceive or see these entities, right? And so then you have the exorcist that have to go in and if somebody becomes possessed by a demon or whatever. So there are who was it? Edith Fiore, I think it was, that she wrote a book called The Unquiet Dead. And she would, in hypnotherapy, she would find out that a lot of people had these, what she called them attachments, these spirit attachments that a lot of us do. I supposedly have it. And I know Steve Richards and his holographic kinetics training and stuff like that, they remove all these entities. I had a friend in the UK that went there, and he had like 17 entities attached to him. There was like Dracos and Greys and reptilians and stuff like that. So I know it's not proof or anything by any stretch, but it does, if it's as above so below, like the Hermetic principle. That, if it's down here, the Bible says we were created in God's image, and so if it's down here, it's very possible that it's also in other realms.
Yeah, I want to get into a little bit more sun and moon stuff when we come back from the break. I know that you talk about that quite a bit, a little bit of the ascension process and, all kinds of stuff, man. I mean, I could go on for hours about this. This is a great subject. We'll be right back with Wayne Bush from trickbythelight.com. Don't go anywhere.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting, TheFringe.fm, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of The Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on TheFringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, It's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you won't forget. Like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the paranormal.
Live Saturday nights at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on KTLK, The Fringe.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
Do you find yourself bored and longing to learn more about the mysteries and conspiracies behind our reality? Specifically, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific? What a coincidence, because that's exactly when me, Gigi, and my lovely co-host Cortana kicked over the airwaves with just the right amount of intellectual stimulation to give you that eargasm of conversational excellence that you deserve. So be sure to check out our show, Shift Happens, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central, and let's shake some talk radio tail feather, shall we? Right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hey, it is I, Kurt Green from the Kurt Green Hour. Come hang out with me every Wednesday night at midnight, Pacific Standard Time. As we unwind, hey, grab a cup of coffee, hang out with me, enjoy the ride. That's midnight every Wednesday night, right here on the Fringe.fm.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
We are still getting strange on Sundays. Hey everyone, it's me, Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, letting you know we're on live Sunday nights right here on the Fringe FM. The Strange Sunday saga continues live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Listen on thefringe.fm or at beyondthestrange.com. Again, that's Sunday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific. See you there.
To call the show, pick up the phone and dial 501-777-5631. That's 501-777-5631.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're here with Wayne Bush from TrickedByTheLight.com. Don't go to the light, folks. It could be a trick. Maybe. We're going to keep talking about that a little bit more. Tomorrow night on the program, I guess I could give it away. I may possibly have Whitley Strieber coming on the program. He said he was going to, he could come on the program. And then I exchanged times with him, and I haven't heard from him since. I think he's a pretty busy man, but there's a possibility Whitley Strieber is going to be on Lighting the Void tomorrow night. So we're back here with Wayne Bush talking about the light. And I was thinking, you know what I was thinking, dude? Did you watch that Hobbit movie where he was chasing the dragon Smaug or whatever? And he was like, why are you hiding in the shadows? Step into the light. And he looked all evil when he said it. It's like the light was meant to be an evil thing or something. And you see that in a lot of movies, don't you?
Well, there's another one, I think, Lord of the Rings, where they're like in a marsh or something like that, and there's a golem-type creature, and he's talking about the shadows of the light also. Yeah, you see it in a ton of movies. It's just crazy how much it's there. But, if you do have Whitley Strieber on, make sure you ask him about the light, because I know that when John Lear was on the Art Bell show, and Art Bell, this was like the second time. I mean, this is after he had said that Don't Go to the Light is a trick. Art brought it back up in a subsequent interview, and he asked him about that. He said, and John qualified it. He said, now that's what Whitley told me. He told Art that's what Whitley Strieber told him, that the light was a trick. And of course, Whitley's had all these abduction experiences where he's been with the Greys, and so maybe he knows. Maybe he'll talk a little more about that.
And just in case you guys don't know, he still does Dreamland too. If you guys remember that Dreamland, go to unknowncountry.com and check out that show. It's still really cool. But yeah, I'd love to talk to him about that as well. But do you think that we're being programmed, to go into the light, whether it's in movies, religion, and all this stuff? It seems like that's just what we're being fed to do, right?
It's in the language, it's just crazy how many different phrases we have. You're enlightened, or I saw the light, or then it dawned on me. I mean, there's just so many catchphrases that they use. And then if you look at the logos that these billion-dollar corporations have, and how many of them, incorporate the sun into their logo, there's just dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of them. And you see the eclipse a lot too, by the way. But as far as the sun goes, you look at the esoteric secret societies, and many of them have it in their name, like the Order of the Golden Dawn, or the Knights of the Golden Circle. I was watching TV the other day, and they were talking about the Golden Globe Awards. So it's just so prominent in our culture. Everywhere you look or turn, it's, you hear these words about the sun. I mean, but then there's like these tongue-in-cheek phrases where they say, you're SOL. If you're SOL, you're shit out of luck or whatever. But and that's like it's almost like nobody kind of gets that it's the soul, SOL, soul, and that's the sun. But it's kind of like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink inside joke for them,
Yeah, wouldn't that be crazy? It was just a bunch of archons and aliens just going, look at these fools. Look at them. They just keep going toward the light like bugs in a zapper.
And how many of the religious figures have like the halo or whatever, but you look at the pictures and there's this golden sun behind them. It's just constant throughout.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even question it if it wasn't for the scientific nature that Robert Monroe took when he was doing these things, and they kept talking about these beings disappear when they go into the light, or they're heading towards the light and they just dissipate, and you're thinking, man, what do you mean dissipate? Like what? It freaks me out a little bit. John Teeter was here from the Spreaker chat, wants to know, hey, what if you want to reincarnate on another planet? Have you had anybody talk about that in the astral travel or any of the studies you've done? I would think you could just like command it maybe or something.
Well, my friend who I interviewed, he actually it's kind of like one of his plans. He says that you can negotiate. First of all, I personally wouldn't want to go through the tunnel and into the light. If you get to the point where you're negotiating with the demiurge, I think you're kind of fighting a losing battle at that point. But he says that you can request a better planet to be on. And maybe, the lessons are kinder and more gentle, whatever. But, when he was coming back to Earth, he saw these souls veering off to other places that are way different than what ours is. But there are other planets that you can incarnate on, definitely.
Oh, I forgot. But by the way, if you guys want to call in and ask any questions to Wayne, it's 501-777-5631. I'm supposed to talk about that when I come back from break, but I never do because I'm so focused on this conversation. David J. in the Spreaker chat says, so here's a question. Tibetan Dream Yoga teaches that you have to enter the clear light. He wants to know what you think about that. Is that the real light maybe they're talking about?
Well, the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about entering the void or entering the clear light, and they said stay away from the smoky light of hell. It's possible that the void, the clear light is I don't know, a solution. I searched for void on the NDERF website, and I think about 2/3 of the ones mentioning the void were positive experiences, and maybe a third were negative. There's different kinds of voids. Maybe there's a void where it's a lot of darkness, and a lot of times that's not really a pleasant experience. But I don't know. I have. There's one that Mellon Thomas Benedict, I think his name is, where he went to a light behind the light, and then he also talked about a void, and I can read that. Here's the ones I think we were just talking about, going to the light behind the light. He said, as I began to move toward the light, I knew intuitively that if I went to the light, I would be dead. So as I was moving toward the light, I said, please wait a minute, just hold on a second here. I want to think about this. I would like to talk to you before I go. To my surprise, the entire experience halted at that point. You are indeed in control of your near-death experience. You're not on a roller coaster ride. So my request was honored, and I had some conversations with the light. The light kept changing into different figures like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, mandalas, archetypal images, and signs. I asked the light, what is going on here? Please, light, clarify yourself for me. I really want to know what the reality of the situation. He said, I cannot really say the exact words because it was sort of telepathy. The light responded. The information transferred to me was that your beliefs shape the kind of feedback you're getting before the light. And here's the one where he went to a light beyond the light. He said, as I passed into the second light, I expanded beyond the first light. I found myself in a profound stillness beyond all silence. I could see or perceive forever, beyond infinity. I was in the void. I was in pre-creation, before the Big Bang. I had crossed over the beginning of time, the first word, the first vibration. I was in the eye of creation. I felt as if I was touching the face of God. It was not a religious feeling. Simply, I was at one with absolute life and consciousness. I can tell you this now. The void is less than nothing, yet more than everything that is. The void is absolute zero. Chaos forming all possibilities. It is absolute consciousness, much more than even universal intelligence. What mystics call the void is not a void. It is so full of energy, a different kind of energy that has created everything that we are. Where is the void? I know. The void is inside and outside everything. You, right now, even while you live, are always inside and outside the void simultaneously. You don't have to go anywhere or die to get there. The void is the vacuum or nothingness between all physical manifestations, the space between atoms and their components. I was in the void, and I was aware of everything that had ever been created. It was like I was looking out of God's eyes. I had become God.
Who said that?
Mellon Thomas Benedict. I think he had a near-death experience. It's quite well known.
The Kabbalists call that the Ein, or the Ein Sof. You know, the Ein, the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof Or. It's like way above Ketzer.
Right. I actually had a woman who emailed me. I think she was from Florida, and she had been reading my articles on my website for like a year, and then she had I guess you could call it a near-death experience. She went into a coma, and for like, I don't know, a few weeks or something like that. But she said that when she was having the experience, she told herself not to be tricked by any relatives or angels, so she kind of put that out of her mind, and she found herself in this void. And she said it was the most peaceful place she'd ever been, and that the nurses would come into her room, and she was emanating such peace and everything that they commented on it and how peaceful she was, and they treated her so nicely because of that, and brought her flowers and all this other stuff. But that she said that oftentimes, she can go back to that place of peacefulness, and that her face kind of glows because then that people will comment on it. So that is another experience of the void. I had another woman who wrote me, and she went to more of a black void, and she literally said that she saw these like 7 demonic type entities that were like antagonizing her and trying to feed off of her, and they were like doing things from her life that she had done that, where you didn't help somebody, but you could have, but yet it was something that they really should have done for themselves. Like, little nicky-knack, ticky-tack type stuff. And so she was going through this just hell experience of these things, like tormenting her, right? And then she saw this entity that she literally called an archon, right? And this thing, she said it had a serpentine like tail or lower body, and she couldn't see the head or the face, but that she just kind of had the knowledge that it was what she would call an archon. And she sent the experience to Enderth, and they would not publish it as a near-death experience, even though she was in ICU for like 12, 14 days. And they did publish it on OBERF, which is for out-of-body experiences and other type experiences, but they wouldn't post that one as a near-death experience, which I found kind of odd.
More serpent bodies. That's freaking me out a little bit too.
More serpent bodies.
I really think you guys should get Robert Monroe's books if you're a skeptic. I'm just saying from a skeptic's point of view about this. You can't pick up a religious text really and go off of that. You can use it for correlations and parallels. But if you want to see somebody take a scientific approach to what happens through dimensions of consciousness, I would definitely recommend Robert Monroe or William Buhlman. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. William Buhlman's stuff is just phenomenal. As far as I'm concerned, it's more in the solution category. I mean, he covers, how to have out-of-body experiences and all that too, which I don't think Robert Monroe got so much into the, how it's solutions. I'm not sure he even, talked about the light being a trick or a problem at all, but he talked about the emitter that emitted this what he called a dream or a hologram. So he did have some interesting things to say. Also, the Sumerian text, like Sumer is the first civilization that we know of. As far as archaeologists, I mean, people talk about Atlantis and Lemuria and all these other civilizations, but we don't have a whole lot of hardcore evidence. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying Sumer is the one civilization that we have a lot of records on, and in those texts, there's like 7, they call them the Anuna, which are basically the Anunnaki, the gods, and that Enki was asked by Nama, who was the primordial mother goddess, and the gods were complaining because they were having to toil and work, and they were getting tired, and so they wanted to create a worker slave, and so Enki told Nama, the mother goddess, that the being we need already exists here on Earth. And so basically they were talking about the primitive early hominids and genetic scientist, and he took and modified or altered the DNA and created us so that we could basically worship and give them praise and work for them as slaves. But Enki's was called the supreme dragon in the text, and his symbol was the serpent. So once again, in the most ancient text we have, there's the serpent deity again.
What do you think about the moon, man? What do you think that is? Do you think it's like, because it's really a mysterious like satellite thing. There's so many questions about it. It just seems to be
artificial. I mean, John Lear knows so much more about the moon than I have in my little finger. But his website, The Living Moon, I don't know if he still keeps up with that or not. But it's an artificial. It looks like a rock, but it must be hollow because when the astronauts landed, they said it rang like a bell, right? So that's pretty curious. And then there was a time supposedly when there was no moon, so people have speculated that it was maybe towed into position there. Of course, you have Star Wars, where the satellite or the moon is the Death Star.
Yeah.
And then there's so many people that have looked at the moon and they found a lot of structures on the moon, buildings. I think Mark Gray even interviewed which one of the astronauts. I'm drawing a blank on which one it was, but he was saying that there were buildings and structures on the moon, one of the astronauts. And so and you look at the craters are so smooth. I mean, how do they get so smooth? I mean, I'm no scientist. Maybe there's an explanation for it. And then
on a spiritual
the whole
level,
thing to top it all off is that the moon is like 380 times closer than the sun, but 380 times smaller, so that when it passes in front of the sun, it just forms this perfect eclipse, right? Which is just crazy eerie to me. And then, of course, the moon always shows the same side to us. Pink Floyd did the album Dark Side of the Moon, but it's because, the one side is always facing toward us. And, scientists will say it's tidal locking or whatever, but still, it's hard to, pass that off as not being pretty weird, I think.
Well, what I was talking to you about the break, how the Golden Dawn refers to the astral realm and the dream world, your lunar body, and then they're trying to ascend to your solar, what they call the solar body, and then on from there. It seems like this whole alchemical process they're talking about of getting, consciousness and rising in consciousness goes step by step and right along with what Robert Monroe's saying, who never studied the occult or the Golden Dawn or anything that, to my knowledge, and is talking about how once you get on Earth, it's like you're trapped here. You're stuck in this game and you can't get out, because I know in the third book, and I hate to give spoilers away on this book, but they're trying to rescue one of their friends, and he's oblivious to everything because he's just stuck in this consciousness.
Right. And I was going to read this thing. Oh, here it is. A lot of the secret societies, like you mentioned, they do talk about the lunar light and the solar, light of the sun. And I know, was it Gurdjieff talked about the moon being, food for the, or men being food for the moon. He was into the secret stuff too. But from the Secret Teachings of All the Ages by the 33-degree Freemason Manly P. Hall, he talks about the three suns. And he says, certain Rosicrucian scholars have given special appellations to these three phases of the sun. The spiritual sun they call the Vulcan, the solar and intellectual sun, Christ and Lucifer, respectively, and the material sun, the Jewish demiurgus Jehovah. Lucifer here represents the intellectual mind without the illumination of the spiritual mind. Therefore, it is the false light. The false light is finally overcome and redeemed by the true light of the soul, called the second Logos, or Christ. The secret process by which the Luciferian intellect is transmuted into the Christly intellect constitute one of the great secrets of alchemy and are symbolized by the process of transmuting base metals into gold. That was from The Secret Teaching of All Ages. So, yeah, and I know that Alice Bailey, who is a theosophist, I've got some of her books, too, that are interesting, where I think she's got one called, is either The Astral Light, and then another one is like talking about how the
rays, the 7 rays or whatever.
Yeah, the 7 rays.
Yeah.
I think it's called the solar initiation or something. I mean, they're talking about being initiated in the sun and all this other kinds of stuff. And I never really read the books because I don't believe in it, but I read it as kind of have an interesting eye on what some of the leaders of this planet believe, because a lot of them, I think George Bush Sr., which I'm no relation to him, by the way.
What do you mean you don't believe in it? You don't think that they're right about it?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's kind of a trick, like some of this other stuff. I mean, maybe the sun is a stargate or something like that. I mean, I don't know, but I personally believe that the sun, the white light of the near-death experience, is the sun, and that like near-death experiences, when they see their body after they come out of their body, their astral body, they say, is translucent liquid light, and it's like an orb or maybe what do you call it? I can't think of the word, but it doesn't look anything like your physical body, right? So, and by the way, our physical sun is actually white. The sun is white, and so in the astral plane, there are so many near-death experiences that actually. One of them said, I flew right into the sun. One of them said, it looks so much like the sun, but it didn't blind your eyes. I mean, there's just dozens where they actually compare the white light of the near-death experience to the sun. And so if our bodies don't look like our bodies in the astral, then the sun wouldn't necessarily look like the physical sun either.
This is so fascinating to me. You know what? Here's what I want to say. I had David Griffin on this show, and David Griffin is one of the leaders of the United States Organization of the Golden Dawn, one of the modern orders, right? You know, and he told me, because I asked him what this whole thing was about, and he told me that same thing about archons and all this, and he said that what we're supposed to do is transmute our soul out of the soil of our body on past the lunar body into our solar body, and I may be getting this wrong, on past that even, so that we become infinite, immortal, conscious beings that can move through stars. He said, I'm not talking about physical, dense planets. He said, what I'm talking about is living in starlight and being able to go and live in stars, through the stars, that's what it's all
becoming the sun
about.
yourself, maybe, right?
And I was like, I got to thinking again, man, about Robert Monroe's books. You know,
you're breaking up. I can't hardly hear what you're saying.
What did you ask me the
I
first
know
time?
you're talking about you talked about. Or something like that, but he called him sun-souled Lucifer. Other books, they talk about the demiurge being associated with the sun. I mean, I know the GRS Mead, I think the one who translated the Pistis Sophia and stuff like that, he's equated the demiurge with the sun. So there's quite a few reference materials that will equate that with the sun. And then I know some of the secret societies, don't they talk about Sirius, or these the central sun and all these others, the sun behind the sun. So yeah, I mean, I can't dismiss what they say. I mean, because I don't really know. I mean, it's very interesting.
Man, the Skype just did something really crazy. I don't know, like it knocked out the sound or something.
Yeah, you were breaking up. I couldn't hear half of what you're saying.
Great. I'm getting the blue screen. I hope I'm not getting the blue screen. It must be the Archons, John said. Some people lost me there for a minute, man. Yeah, there's been some wacky stuff going on in the tech world, but yeah, I just...
They do have control. Or we're still on the air, you think?
Yeah.
When I was interviewing my friend, he almost seemed like he didn't think the interview was going to happen, because these beings, they mess with electronics, and he's tried to write his story and stuff like that, and it disappears on his computer, and he's like trying to text emails and stuff like that, and they just erase it, or they do have a lot of control over the electronics.
Well, I wasn't trying to. I don't know, man. It seems like every time I get to the answer, okay, so, I'm down to the answer. So we're going to go through star light and sound and all this other stuff. We're going to be past the stars, and that's what this whole thing about. And then Wayne Bush comes along and goes, no, dude, the light's a trick. And I'm like, now what? Now what?
All that's the physical dimension, right? It's the whatever this is, the third dimension or whatever. And so if you're just going in the stars and, the edge of the universe, or into the better bet would be going to like the center of the universe. And maybe if you're going through a wormhole or a Stargate or something like that, at least you have a chance of going up to higher dimensions. But like I say, I personally agree with Nikola Tesla when he talks about everything being frequency or energy, and so if there's higher dimensions, it would be based, I guess, on frequency, although dimensions are off at a perpendicular 90-degree angle, but I still think it's all kind of a continuum of frequency. So my goal is just to use my intention to raise my frequency.
You. I'm not mad at you. I'm just mad because I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
William D. Ullman says it too. So
does he? Okay. Well, I can trust that, man.
About moving inward, he says we're multidimensional beings, and that frequency is wavelength, right? Mm-hmm. So higher frequency is shorter and shorter waves, or shorter and shorter wavelengths. So you would actually be traveling inward. You would be going within yourself. You would be moving inward. And so that's why the mantra "move inward" to me is a good one. And also higher frequency. But I wouldn't use the word source or something like that. Or I know he says higher self.
Source is the sun. Oh, you want to go to the source? Okay.
Right. Or the source is a lizard. I mean, SAURUS. It's a source. Source is lizard. So you got to be careful, I think, with that kind of stuff. And then he says higher self now. I mean, I'm not comfortable with the term higher self either. If it's like an oversoul, so what? Oh, you just go back to your oversoul. I mean, I want to go to like the highest frequency there is. I mean, but I do like his thinking about moving inward, and because it's all about frequency.
Have you ever tried the shamanic type stuff, like plant and herbal medicine, like maybe dimethyltryptamine? Have you ever thought about that?
No,
I've never done it.
I know David Icke wrote that book about infinity or whatever. He wrote it after a DMT or after an ayahuasca experience he had. I've never done any drugs. I've read a lot about them. There's a website called DMT Nexus, and there's a lot of experiencers who, after or while doing their DMT, I mean, they say they're shot through like a wormhole, basically, and a lot of it, they see these geometric figures and stuff like that, but a lot of them will have contact with these entities, and some of these entities, they feel like they're feeding off of them, and some of the entities will even talk to them and tell them, I know this one, Sevilla, I'm not sure if that's part of the DMT.
Salvia. Oh, yeah.
Salvia, yeah.
I would stay away from that if I was you. I'm
not...
somebody having an experience with it?
Yeah, they said that this entity started talking to him and telling him that this is all a game, that God is basically has us in, and that we just have to go through it and all this stuff. So I mean, these entities, they actually tell him a lot of stuff about this being a game, or they can. That's a lot of the experiences will feel them feeding off of them. I know Dr. Rick Strassman, when he wrote his book, The Spirit Molecule, he talked about how like half of his experiences, or so many of the experiences, would meet these reptilians or insects or gray aliens. They have experience with all kinds of aliens, these clowns, or the Terrence McKenna machine elves and stuff like that. So. No, personally, I'd rather try to do it naturally. I'd like to have an astral projection, an out-of-body experience. I think that would be fine.
Man,
but I don't want to mess with the drugs.
I got you. Me neither. That's why I was just wondering if you've ever had that kind of experience. But like I said, man, I didn't have any out-of-body experiences until I listened to that audiobook on Audible, which is William Buellman's How to Have an Out-of-Body Experience. It was pretty expensive, but it was worth it. I think I used my free credit with it to get it anyways, but it was the one time where when you launched out of your body, you're like, okay, am I really out? And then you can look at yourself sleeping, and you're like, oh, dude, I'm really out. This is the thing.
The other thing is I think I mentioned Alex Gray earlier, and he's pretty well known within like the New Age community and whatnot. A lot of his paintings and stuff are very popular. And I was watching one of his YouTube videos, and he says that those paintings are a result of his experiences with DMT. And he was talking. Well, he collaborated with the alternative rock band Tool to make this one video in particular. It was called Vicarious, and then the song Vicarious is almost told from the first point of view of these entities, and they talk about how they vicariously live through us. And in this video, it's showing these ticks and leeches and stuff coming out of the body, and there's like an octopus that's almost, I think it looks around the moon or something like that. Huh?
Yeah, I heard that through the Forest Moon Paranormal. They said that these larva type beings will attach to your aura or your astral body or something. That's weird.
Right. So, he as a result of his DMT experiences, he's doing paintings with all these basically parasites and stuff that are feeding off of man, So it's just something I personally want to stay away from. And I know I've had people write to me before, and all of a sudden they're seeing these Egyptian deities and stuff like that, and they're being told, that they're the, mother goddess or something, and I don't know. I don't know if it's true or whatnot, but I know that these archons or these shadow beings or these parasites or whatever, I think they can implant thoughts or hallucinations, and as long as they can take you on a ride and get you convinced that there's something important. I've had people write me that on DMT, and they went through. This one guy said he found himself on a farm with like this 7 foot tall or something gray alien, and they were showing him this farm that they were on, and he didn't understand the meaning of it all, but there's just so many experiences that are that way.
I think I know what I'm going to do, man. If I think I'm dead, sometimes you don't know. You don't know if you're dead or not. According to Robert Monroe, some people just don't know. But if I pass away, before I do anything, I'm going to be like, hold on a second. Where's Wayne? Where did Wayne go? Before I do anything, I want to talk to Wayne just to see what he did, you know. And then, you know, I'm not saying you'd be dead when I was dead, but this is so unsettling.
Like I said, be careful. They got those Akashic records. They could send somebody looks exactly like him.
Okay.
Yeah, here you go. Yeah, go to the light. It's okay. I was wrong, right? You know.
Right. Yeah. So,
I think it's something we all have to come to our own conclusions. That's a monumental thing, you know, obviously. And, you know, it's not that most of the near-death experiences don't even see a light or go to the light. So, I mean, it's to say that, you're definitely going to see a light and you either have to make this choice to go to it or not. I mean, like I said, I think everything is driven by our consciousness. And so there was people that, like, one guy saw this, like, I don't know, this fireball kind of going through the sky, and he said it kind of reminded him of like a nuclear generator or something like that. But anyway, it was this tunnel or whatever, and he said, "No, I want my own." And he literally created his own tunnel to go through. He goes, "That is mine," and he went through that. And then there's this other woman, Nancy D., where she found herself going through the tunnel, and she realized that it was just an illusion. And so she stopped going through it, and there was, I can know somebody else was talking about how they were very experienced. This was during an out-of-body experience, and this was on one of the Reddit subforums, and he was talking about how he heard this voice say, "You are now entering the afterworld," or something like that. Wow. And he backed up. And he went back into it again, and he heard the same message, and he did it like a couple times because he said he's really experienced with astral projection, and he came to the conclusion it's just a tape loop or some kind of looped program. And I think William or Robert Monroe mentioned something about that too.
Yep, he did. As soon as you said that, I was thinking about that. A loop.
He mentioned another thing.
Yep.
That was like a wheel. He said it was like some kind of something that sorts you out and puts you where you need to be. And I've heard experiences about this wheel that people interact with that just has it just sorts people and puts them in some body or whatever.
They got to make a movie about his trilogy, man, or something.
Yeah, it'd be really good.
Well, I've tried to match it up, and I can see that's what you do too. But you're taking. I like your approach to all this because you're not just buying. If you go to his website at trickbythelight.com, you can see there's so much information there. And it's not like you're giving into all the information. You're just looking at it, you know. You're just looking at all of it and trying to validate things, looking at parallels. So I trust what you're doing, and your methods and what you're doing, man. I'm just kind of. I can understand why Art Bell asked this to everybody after he talked to John Lear about that, because it bothers your mind after a while, Yeah. And if Whitley Strieber comes on the program or whoever else, you're going to want to say, "Hey, by the way, would you go to the light?" You're going to want to know. I mean, because it's a little scary, to be honest with you.
Well, we may not have a choice. It's hard to say what happens. And I know the Gnostic text talked about there being a virgin of light or something like that, and that they even talks about the receivers of the moon and the receivers of the sun and the receivers of the light, and that they'll take it and they'll put it through a purifier. I think they call it Melchizedek, the purifier, or something like that, and then they'll put you back down, put your souls back down into men or animals or whatever. But in your last your last incarnation, when you're ready to get out of it, they'll put you in a righteous body or something like that, to where maybe you can, on your last go around, you learn the mysteries or whatever. But another near-death experience that I remember somebody saying that the light was a varying frequency or varying intensity, and that depended upon the purity of one's heart. So that would kind of match with the different people seeing that the light's cloudy or the light's misty, but then other near-death experiences will say the light was pure, so there could be just varying intensities of light. And if it's all coming out of our own projection from our own consciousness, then that might fit. So I think it's extremely important to practice spiritual alchemy to where you are transmuting your lead into gold. So like, you get rid of the fear and the doubt and the guilt and the hate and anger and all that, the envy, hate, and greed, as John Lear would say, and make sure you practice, altruism and not unconditional love, but love for others and kindness and mercy, compassion. Yeah, integrity. And I look at it a lot like the movie The Wizard of Oz, where Frank Baum wrote that, and he was a theosophist. And in that movie, I think it has so many parallels to the near-death experience. Well, first of all, Dorothy's on a farm, right? So we were talking about all this being a farm, but she goes through this vortex, right, which is the tornado, right? And so the near-death experiencers, they go through. Sometimes they're called a vortex or a tunnel or a spiral or whatever, and then they say there's colors over there that are so much brighter, and there's colors that we don't even have here on Earth, right? And so when she goes through this tunnel or whatever, when she comes out the other side, the movie switches from black and white all of a sudden into color, right? And then there's a spiral golden path that she's going down, and then she meets all these different characters, that all are lacking one or another quality that they need. Like the Tin Man needed a brain, and the Scarecrow. The Tin Man needed a heart, and the Scarecrow needed a brain, and then the Cowardly Lion, needed courage. And so I think those represents all the different things that we need. Like we need wisdom, which is the brain, and we need to have a pure heart. The spiritual alchemy, the love that I was talking about, and then the Cowardly Lion. I think the third component is like willpower, because like I was saying, everything is manifested by your intent or desire, and so it's very important to have this powerful will, to resist all the temptations or distractions that the archons might send your way. So and then of course you football. Have and so you have the Wizard of Oz was this man that perpetuated the whole illusion, right? And he was just this frail little man behind the curtain, but he would show his face as like this green alien or whatever, and he's pulling all these levers and stuff behind the scenes, and everyone's buying into his illusion, right? But he was really nothing to be afraid of. And so at the very end, when Dorothy wants to go back home, when she goes back home, she repeats the mantra, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place like home. So she's doing that positive intention of going, back home to where it's pure and safe and everything.
It makes you wonder, in the Bible where they talk about the lake of fire, all souls liars will be cast in the lake of fire. And I'm thinking, what if that's just like a consciousness recycle light, Throw them in there, recycle them, and start over, I don't know.
The sun is what they say. It's fire, and the word for the Greek word for sun was helios, Helios, and the sun, even in the Bible it says that God is a consuming fire. I don't know. There's just some things that kind of pop into my mind as you're talking about that. The lake of fire, in the near-death experience on that website, you search for hell or Satan or all that stuff. I think there's only like 40 out of 4,000, maybe one out of 100, so it's like 1%. I know people have quoted higher figures, but at least on that website, there was like maybe 1% that experienced, or not, they didn't even experience it. They were shown it or they saw it, and they were hardly ever themselves experiencing it. And so I think that you can leave anytime you want, because it's all driven by your consciousness. But if you're convinced you deserve to go to hell because you went to church and they told you you're a no good sinner and all this that, then you could keep yourself there. And this woman who wrote me where she found herself in a void, when these demons, she said they look like the creatures in the movie Constantine.
Oh my
but
God.
They except for that they didn't have like the faces like babies or something like that. But I think she said that once she said to herself that I don't deserve all this is bullshit. She said that this mother figure or mother goddess reached kind of saved her from the entities, right? But it was when she came to her own realization, when she put an end to it, like, I don't deserve this, that she was rescued. And she said that the beings actually she didn't see it, but she said she had the knowledge or whatever that they were spiders. They were like spiders, and she said especially the mother figure. And then when she rescued her from these entities, the entities were like, but you said we could have her or something like that, you know. Almost, but she said the mother figure, she thought that she was good and everything, I guess because, you know, she was in hell and she no longer was. But there seems to be like they're working in unison together there, you know, like the good cop, bad cop, and you got this. It's a game of duality or polarity, and you got the two sides, and there's the hell, and they'll scare you to the light, right? And you deserve to go to hell, but if you go to the light, you'll be saved.
I just had a real freaky deja vu thing. I hadn't had one of those in a long time, but it lasted for about 20 seconds. I kept looking around to make sure. Yep, having deja vu. That's weird.
It's like the movie The Matrix, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Even the candle, man. I got this silver candle that's about a quarter lit next to me, and I looked at it, and I was like, I've seen all this before. The chat room I'm looking at, listening to your voice. Weird. It happens. I had deja vu in a long time.
They say that we plan out our lives ahead of time. I mean, I don't know how much free will there actually is. If we do have free will, it's you know, not in this realm so much. It's when you're more in the astral or beyond, where they convince you that you need to come back, and so you plot out your life and all the supposedly the lessons you need to learn or whatnot, and so it's all basically planned ahead of time, all the major events of your life, and so I don't know. I think it's at some level we're kind of living the dream of God, you know, that there probably is a true God.
Dude, what if that's what I've always thought? I just said dude on the radio again. I said I would never say that, but you know, when I get into really deep conversations, the dude comes out. So sorry about that. But I always thought, like, you know, because sometimes when I'm taking a shower, early in the morning, I'll phase in and out of consciousness. And I'll be like, and I'll wake back up, kind of, you know how you're phasing in and out because you're so tired. And I'll wake back up, and I'm like, wait a minute, that reality I was just in isn't better. It was more real than this one. What if I'm in a dream trying to wake up? You know,
I was just gonna say, it's like a dream within a dream. You know, like Edgar Allan Poe talked about a dream within a dream, or what is it? Merrily, you know, row your boat gently down the stream. You know, life is but a dream, and you know the boat is your soul, and the stream is like a stream of consciousness. But I mean, I do think, you know, as above, so below. So we have these dreams, and 1/3 of our life we spent, you know, asleep. And what's up with that, right? So we have these dreams, and how do we know that this that we're in right now isn't a dream? It's like the movie Inception, where you've got embedded realities or dreams. And ultimately, I think it's like a game, or it's a divine drama or a cosmic play that we're putting on, because as true spirits, you know, for whatever reason, maybe we're bored, or everything seems to be about stories and experiences, and you know, if you have to have a good story, you know, you have to have drama and conflict. I mean, you can ask any scriptwriter in Hollywood, and you know, you have to have a, you know, hero and a villain, and it makes for good drama.
Makes for good loosh.
Yeah, it makes for good loosh. And so this is like a reality TV show that we're in. It's like, you know, why are they so popular? In the movie, The True Man Show, you know, is like he was living in a reality TV show, and I think we do have spirits or aliens, whatever you want to call them. They're watching, and they're entertained by some of this. They're feeding off of all that drama.
So you think because you responded pretty good with that, you think that this could be this could be the falsest reality that we're in right now?
Yeah, this is as dead as we get.
Huh? I think the Hopi tribe did believe that this wasn't reality.
Or the Mayans. The
Mayans, maybe I'm getting that backwards.
Maya, the word Maya means illusion. And, you know, there are a lot of near-death experiencers that actually come back, or, you know, that when they were over there, they looked at this and they said this is a dream, or it's an illusion, or it's a game. I mean, I've got at least one or two dozen quotes of people talking about it's entertainment. Well, this one guy asked them, "What's the meaning of life?" They told him it's for the entertainment of the spirit realm. Of course, they get they're told many different things of what the meaning was, and so it's hard to draw any steadfast conclusions from that. But a lot of them have seen the grid lines. It's pretty interesting. I mean, these are near-death experiences. These are just not people that had a dream.
How many of them have you read, do you think?
Oh, man, hundreds. Maybe a couple thousand. I don't know. Seems like I've read most of them. I don't know. So many.
Well, I know I had Thomas Campbell on here, the physicist that helped come up with Hemisync with Robert Monroe.
Big Toe?
Yeah.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was on here, and he said that what he told me was he's like, you need to look at it like a video game,
Yeah.
Basically, you can only see with your consciousness out to the TV, and there's something behind the scenes playing the video game. You die, you come back, you try again. I should have asked him, though. I wish I'd have talked to you before I talked to him, because I'd have said, hey, would you go to the light, Thomas? He'd probably say no. He'd probably say what you said.
Probably. My friend that I interviewed and I talked to quite often, he says they play us like video game characters. That really, I mean, we are basically, but they don't feel our pain or our suffering up there. I don't know, but it sure feels real down here, and that's what I don't get is the need to learn. Like, if you're up, they say when you're during the near-death experience, when they're in the light, that they know everything there is in the universe. And so if we're supposed to come here to learn, it's hard to understand. Only thing I do know about what does need to keep learning, and that's artificial intelligence. They constantly have to, reprogram the algorithm to get better and better and better and to learn more. We have these smart technologies, smartphones and whatnot. And I think the Gnostic texts refer to this demiurge character as being without spirit. And if we are in a simulation, then there's an awful lot of artificial constructs involved. It's a virtual reality, and it's all a game, right? According to that line of thinking.
Do you think that you could? Catalina is asking a question in the Spreaker chat. Wants to know, can you see your future in what they call the Akashic Records, or is it just you can only look at your past?
I think you can look at your future. I know this woman where she was part of the mind control programming. I'm not sure which project, if it was like Monarch or one of those, but she can read some of the Akashic Records, and she says that her kids and stuff don't want to know the future, and she has access to some of that stuff. Yeah, I think that you can, because we plan it all in advance. It's all and supposedly time is an illusion, and everything just happens at once, which is kind of hard to understand. But I think you can see the future or know it. As a matter of fact, the man I interviewed, he was shown what basically the end of the earth was. I mean, he saw a period where we went through a darkness, and then on the other side where he says the demiurge gives up his game that he's playing. It's like a balancing act where it's 2/3 light and 1/3 darkness, but at the end he just gives up because the souls stop reincarnating, they stop coming back to earth. And so there's this period of darkness, and then basically we rebuild earth for, there's like a period of peace for thousands of years or something. So he was shown a future, and some of the near-death experiences were like, what if you make this choice to go back? Here's what will happen if you do go back, and here's what will happen if you don't go back. And they're literally shown the future. And how much of that is manipulation and is really true? Who knows?
Are you you're into the crowd that says that we're never going to know the answers? Do you believe that?
I think eventually.
There, finally. I get so. I mean, God, I hate when people say that, and I know it's probably true, but my whole life is about trying to figure this stuff out, and I can tell by looking at your website. Yours is too. So does it bother you when people say that? You're never going to know anyway, so don't worry about it. Well, what do you mean? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, my family, people tell me that it's just you'll never know and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I think I found out of an awful lot. I mean, I don't know everything, that's for darn sure. But there's a lot of evidence and information that we've compiled. So we do know more than when we knew before, right? So I'm amazed at some of the stuff that people have knowledge about.
And you can't even attempt to talk to them about everything you know because there's really nowhere to start, and their eyes are just going to glaze over, and then you're going to look like a crazy person. My
parents, when I mention near-death experiences to them, they say it's a hallucination. But yet these near-death experiencers, I mean, most of them will say that they actually died, right? And they'll say it's more real than the reality that we're in right now. Like we know the difference between our real life and what you had in a dream usually, right? You know, it's a dream, but this is more real. Well, the near-death experiencers say that it's even more real than this, and that they have a higher consciousness at that level than we do here. Like they said that this is like the dream compared to that. So yeah, it's very infuriating when people say that you can't figure it out, or you'll never know, you know, because then it's fatalistic. You won't even try, right?
Right. Well, man, this was definitely a fun conversation. You got to come back on the show or come on Space Out Saturday or something, because I know there's so much information that you got. We hadn't even started to touch the tip of the iceberg with it.
That's very true. So much. Yeah, I'd love to come back anytime.
And how can everybody out there find you on the web? Are you on social media at all?
Yeah, I prefer if they just email me. I don't do the Facebook thing so much.
Don't blame me.
My email address is waynejbush@gmail.com. That's WAYNEJ, the letter J, BUSH@gmail.com. And I love to hear people's experiences or their thoughts on any of this stuff. I learn so much from people. It's amazing.
Yeah, these are my favorite conversations, you know, especially somebody that's been through a lot of the same material I have. And I know that the audience in the chat room really dug it, man. So I'd love to have you back on anytime you're free, because I know you've been on several radio shows now, hadn't you?
I'm getting more and more comfortable with just winging it like this. I mean, even tonight I prepared this long thing I was kind of going to read and go along, because I have no idea what it's going to be like. But I feel real comfortable talking to you, and likewise with I can't remember his name, Ryan, right? With
Ryan Gable, yeah.
Teachings. Yeah, Ryan. So I think I'm becoming more and more comfortable with doing it this way.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out, man. I really appreciate it. Hang out for just a second. All right, guys, we're ending up the show here. We're gonna have to get out of here because it's time for Spaced Out Radio. If you're listening live, don't forget tomorrow night. Hopefully, we'll get Whitley on here. If not, it'll be a great show regardless. That I can promise you. The show is produced by the Fringe FM and cannot be rebroadcast or syndicated without written permission. Music was by Chronox, Kevin MacLeod, and Spaceboy at spaceboymusic.com. See you guys tomorrow night.